Good morning, Year 4. It's Mrs. Cafrello here with your literacy lesson for Wednesday, the 3rd of February. Okay, so if you want to open up your literacy book, you can write today's date up at the top, Wednesday, 3rd of February 2021. Our learning objective today is to draft a conclusion. So miss a line, write in the learning objective. Miss another line and put SPAG for your subheading. Okay, so if you want to pause the video, and you can do that now. So in SPAG today, we're going to be looking again at question marks because I'm really hoping that lots of you managed to get a question into your campaign to get your reader thinking. Okay, so when would we use a question mark? Have a little think. So question marks go at the end of every sentence that is asking a question. And the questions that we get into our campaign might start with things such as, did you know? Can you believe? Okay, so they're all questions that will need a question mark at the end of the sentence. Let's have a look at an example. Did you know that animals are sometimes illegally captured before being taken to live in the zoo? Okay, so a question like this would look really good in your campaign to get your reader thinking. So for task 1 today, I want you to have a look at these sentences and see if you can figure out where the question marks need to go. Okay, so Mild says, did you know that penguins live longer in their natural habitat? Spicy says, can you believe that hunters can kill defenseless animals so they can steal their babies for the zoo? Hop says, are you aware that 1 in every 10 animals die in captivity? Would you keep visiting zoos if you knew this? Okay, so I want you to pause the video now and have a go at putting in the question marks. Where do you think they should go? Okay, let's see how we've done. Mild, did you know that penguins live longer in their natural habitat? So that's a question, so you need a question mark, but where does it go? Okay, our question mark goes at the end of the sentence. We don't need a full stop, we need a question mark. Did you know that penguins live longer in their natural habitat? Question mark. Spicy then. Can you believe that hunters can kill defenseless animals so they can steal their babies for the zoo? Okay, you're asking the reader, can they believe it? Question mark needs to go right at the end of the sentence instead of a full stop. Hot, are you aware that 1 in every 10 animals dies in captivity? Would you keep visiting zoos if you knew this? So there's 2 sentences here and they're both questions, so they would both need a question mark. You're asking the reader, are they aware that 1 in every 10 animals die in captivity? And you're also asking, would you keep visiting zoos if you knew this? Okay, so both sentences there are questions. Give yourself a tick if you got that right. This is how your book should look now. Let's have a look at task 2. So for task 2, I want you to have a look at this fact sheet about monkeys. And I want you to have a go at writing a question about one of these monkeys. You can use these sentence starters to help you. Did you know? Can you believe? Okay, so have a look. The biggest monkey is a male mandrill and he can be 3 feet long. Okay, so we'll underline that and we could turn that into a question. So using that fact for my question, I'm going to put, can you believe? Because it's a shocking fact, such a big monkey. Can you believe a male mandrill can be 3 feet long? Question mark at the end because you're asking your reader if they can believe it. Can you believe a male mandrill can be 3 feet long? And I've got my fact from here and turned it into a question. So I want you to pause the video now, have a look at these facts, and then I want you to have a go at writing a question using these sentence starters. So did you know or can you believe? Okay, so pause the video now and have a go yourself. Okay, so you should have all got a monkey fact from the previous slide and turned it into a question. Okay, make sure that your sentence starts with a capital letter and ends with a question mark. Very important. And the fact I chose to write about: can you believe that patas monkeys can run up to 35 miles an hour? That's faster than some cars. I'm really looking forward to seeing your questions that you've written on Friday when you bring your books back. So today we're going to finish writing our campaign based on keeping animals in captivity. And we're going to do that by writing a conclusion. A conclusion comes at the end of the campaign and it summarises everything that you've put in your campaign. Okay, so it's an overview. It's giving the reader a last chance to understand your ideas and opinions on the subject you're writing about. Okay, so in your next clean sheet in your book, we're going to start writing your conclusion. Let's take a look at today's worksheet. So if you're doing mild, you can write out the paragraph, filling in the blanks. Okay, I want to see you using adjectives and using your own words to finish these sentences. Okay, for spicy, there's some sentence starters to help you, and there's some extra sentence starters printed in your pack this week as well. Okay. Hot, I want you to think about how you're going to get the reader to agree with your campaign. Have you got some last minute facts that you can throw in there to back up your argument, to get them thinking the same way as you? Okay, let's have a go. So spicy, our first sentence starter starts with in conclusion, and this is telling the reader that you're about to conclude everything that you've said in your campaign. Okay, here we go. So in conclusion, I think, I'm not going to put I think, I'm going to put I strongly think that animals are better off living in captivity. Okay, so that's the first sentence, just to let the reader know what your conclusion is going to be about. So looking back to my worksheet, my next sentence starter is have you ever considered? So you're asking the reader, have they ever thought of something that might help them change their mind? Okay, have you ever considered? So let's have a think about how we can end this sentence to get the reader thinking the same way as us. Have you ever considered that animals prefer to live in the zoo? And we're going to finish this sentence with a question mark because it's a question. You're asking the reader, have you ever considered? Okay, have you ever considered that animals prefer to live in the zoo? Let's go back and have a look at our next sentence starter. I believe that. So we're telling the reader now what we believe in our campaign. Okay, so I'm going to say, I believe that animals have everything they need in a zoo. Because some people might not think that they do have everything they need, but I do think that animals have everything they need. They've got the zoologist there to look after them, a vet there if they're poorly, they've got people going to visit them every day, and other animals to play with. So my next sentence starter says for example, so I can give an example of that I believe in. Okay, for example. So let's think of some examples of animals having everything they need in the zoo. Okay, so for example, they have zoologists to help them, And I'm going to use my commas for a list here. I'm going to list 3 things, including my commas. For example, they have zoologists to help them, comma, people to visit them, and lots of food whenever they need it. Okay, so I've got my comma separating my items in the list. Remember, I don't need a comma before my and if it's in a list. And the last sentence starter, if you agree with my campaign, you could. And this is telling the reader what they could do, what action they could take if they agree with your campaign. If you agree with my campaign, you could. Okay, so we're going to think some examples of what people can do to help. So if you've decided that animals would be better off living in the wild, you might want to urge your reader to boycott zoos. That means to stop visiting zoos completely. Okay, and then the animals would eventually have to go back into the wild because there'd be no money for the zoos for people to look after them. Okay, however, if you think that animals are better off in the zoo, and they shouldn't be in their wild, let's have a think of some examples of what your reader could do if they agreed with you. Okay, so I'm going to say, if you agree with my campaign, you could visit zoos to make sure that they have enough money. Because the people buying the tickets to go into the zoo make sure that there's enough money to buy the animals the food and to pay the zoologists and the vets and things. Okay? So if you agree with my campaign, you could visit zoos to make sure that they have enough money. You could also tell other people about the benefits of zoos. Okay? So that's finishing off, just giving the reader some examples of what they could do if they agree with your campaign. And telling other people is always a strong message, because if somebody strongly feels a way about something, other people tend to listen. And that's what I'm hoping is going to happen when I read your campaigns. When you've finished that, I've got a challenge for you. I want you to reread back through your campaign. You won't have your introduction because that's in your other book, but you will have your first paragraph telling your reader why you think the way you think for your campaign. Then you'll have another paragraph explaining that you understand that other people have different opinions, and giving your examples why you don't necessarily agree with those opinions. Then you will have just finished your summary or conclusion, okay? I want you to reread back through it and just make sure that everything flows and makes sense. Make sure you've used capital letters and punctuation in the correct places. And if you're feeling really brave, why not read your campaign to a member of your family, somebody in your house? It could be your brother, your sister. You could even ring your granddad, read it to him. Okay, so read your campaign to somebody, ask them what they think, ask them for some hot and cold critique, see if they can give you any pointers on how you can make your campaign even better. Okay, when you've finished that, I want you to email a photo of your work to year4@hucklow.sheffield.sch.uk. I am really looking forward to reading all these campaigns. Good luck, everybody.